I never thought a single journey could destroy me and rebuild me all at once. When I first landed in Dubai, I carried nothing but dreams in my suitcase and hope in my heart. But what awaited me was not the golden life I imagined. It was struggle, betrayal, and nights that broke my soul. This is the story of how Dubai tested me, changed me, and left scars I never wanted, but also gave me a life I never expected. When I first heard the word Dubai, my mind painted pictures of shining towers, golden lights, and a city that never sleeps. Back home, people spoke about it as if it were paradise. A place where money grew faster than trees, where success waited at every corner, and where even the poorest could build a future if they worked hard enough. Those stories filled my imagination until I started to believe that Dubai was my answer, my escape, my chance to change everything. I was just a young student then, still learning what it meant to be on my own. Life back home was simple but heavy. We didn't have much. My family worked hard to give me an education, but even that felt like a fragile thread. Every month was a struggle. Fees, books, food, and the pressure of knowing that one small mistake could pull everything apart. I often sat in my small room late at night, staring at the cracked ceiling and asking myself, is this all my life will ever be? The dream of Dubai became an answer to that question. Friends who had gone there posted pictures online, smiling in front of luxury cars, taking selfies near Burj Khalifa, showing off fancy clothes and expensive meals. Their words were filled with confidence, as if the city itself had transformed them into someone stronger, someone richer, someone worth noticing. I wanted that. No, I needed that. I remember the day I told my parents. My father sat in silence for a long time, his rough hands resting on the wooden table, his eyes filled with worry. My mother's face paled as if she could already see the distance between us. Are you sure? She asked softly. Dubai is not just lights and buildings. It's hard work, loneliness. It's not easy. But I was young. I thought I knew better. I thought I could handle anything. I convinced them that this was the only way forward. I promised I would study, work, and send money home. I promised I wouldn't let them down. Looking back now, I realized those promises were heavier than I could carry. The day I left, the airport felt like another world. My suitcase was small. Just a few shirts, one pair of shoes, some papers, and a notebook where I had written all my dreams. I hugged my mother tightly, her tears soaking into my shirt, and I looked at my father who only nodded. His lips pressed tightly together as if speaking would break him. I boarded the plane with a pounding heart, thinking, this is it. My life begins now. When the plane touched down in Dubai, I felt both excitement and fear rush through me. The air was different, warm, heavy, filled with the scent of a city that was alive even at night. The first sight of those skyscrapers made me breathless. They stood like giants, glowing against the dark sky, as if to remind me that I was small, insignificant, and yet, standing in the middle of something powerful. But reality arrived quickly. The cousin who was supposed to meet me at the airport didn't show up. I waited for hours, sitting on my suitcase, watching families reunite, businessmen rush by, and tourists laugh with excitement. My phone battery dropped to 0, and I felt panic crawling into my chest. I was alone in a new city with no clear plan. Finally, after what felt like forever, my cousin arrived, looking annoyed and rushed. Come on, he said flatly. I don't have time to waste. That was my first lesson in Dubai. Not everyone is there to help you, not even family. The room I was taken to was nothing like the images I had seen online. It was a cramped space, shared by 6 other men, most of them strangers from different countries. The walls were stained, the air smelled of sweat and cooking oil, and the thin mattress I was given sank as soon as I lay on it. My dreams of comfort vanished in that moment. Still, I told myself it was temporary, that one day I'd move into a better place. That one day, I'd have a view of the city lights instead of a cracked ceiling again. Days turned into weeks, and reality kept pressing down harder. Finding work wasn't easy. I walked for hours under the blazing sun, handing out my CV, waiting for calls that never came. Sometimes I ate only once a day, saving every coin I had because I knew my family was waiting back home. I didn't want them to know how hard it was. Whenever my mother called, I forced a smile into my voice. I'm fine. Dubai is beautiful. Don't worry. But at night, when the others in the room were asleep, I would stare at the ceiling, my stomach empty, my heart heavier than my suitcase. I started asking myself, was this the dream I chased? Did I come here to suffer? Or is this just the price I must pay? And yet, even in those dark moments, I felt something stirring inside me, a strange mix of fear and determination. I was scared, but I wasn't ready to give up. Dubai was not what I expected, but I had already crossed the line of no return. Going back meant failure. Staying meant survival. Little did I know then, this was just the beginning. The city hadn't yet revealed its true face. The betrayals, the heartbreaks, the choices that would change me forever. They were still waiting for me in the shadows of those golden towers. The first month in Dubai passed like a blur of heat, exhaustion, and endless waiting. Every morning I woke up before sunrise, squeezed between the snores of men who, like me, carried broken dreams in their pockets. We were all strangers, but our lives felt the same. Far away from home, chasing something we weren't even sure existed. I still remember the first job interview I went to. It was in a glass building that looked like something from the future. My clothes were neatly ironed, though they smelled faintly of the shared room I lived in. I walked in with my head high, trying to believe I belonged. The receptionist barely looked at me, and the manager's questions felt like arrows, sharp, fast, and leaving me speechless. "Do you have experience?" he asked. "Do you have a local reference?" Each no I gave seemed to close the door tighter. I left the building with sweat on my back, the bright sun blinding my eyes, and a sick feeling in my stomach. That was the first of many rejections. Each one chipped away at my confidence, but I couldn't show weakness. Not to my family back home, not to my roommates who were fighting their own battles, and not to myself. One evening, as I sat on the edge of my mattress, an older roommate from Bangladesh noticed my silence. "First time?" he asked softly. He nodded. He smiled sadly. "Don't worry. Dubai teaches everyone. Sometimes the lessons are bitter, but they will make you stronger." His words stuck with me. Maybe Dubai was less of a golden paradise and more of a teacher. A hard, unkind, but necessary one. As weeks turned into months, I learned how to survive. I learned where to find the cheapest food, how to stretch a single meal into two, how to save a dirham by walking instead of taking the bus. I even found part-time work at a small cafeteria, washing dishes for long hours, my hands red from the soap, my back aching from bending over sinks. It wasn't what I imagined, but at least it was something. At least I could send a small amount of money home. I told my parents everything was fine. Over the phone, I painted pictures of a good life. "The people are nice, the city is beautiful, don't worry about me." My mother's voice would soften, and my father would say, "I knew you could do it." Their faith in me became a mask I wore every day, even when I felt like I was falling apart. But the truth was, loneliness ate at me. I missed home, the smell of my mother's cooking, the sound of my father's evening prayers, the laughter of my younger siblings. Here the city was always moving, but I felt stuck in slow motion. People passed me on the streets, businessmen in suits, tourists with shopping bags, couples holding hands, and I felt invisible, like a shadow among giants. Yet, in the middle of this emptiness, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while delivering tea trays from the cafeteria, I met a man named Karim. He was a customer who noticed me struggling with the heavy plates. "Careful," he said kindly, helping me balance them. His voice carried warmth, something rare in a city where most people didn't even glance at you. We spoke briefly, and he asked about my story. I hesitated, but for some reason I told him. I told him about my family, my dreams, and how hard it had been. He listened without interrupting, then simply said, "Don't give up. Dubai breaks many, but it also rewards those who endure." It was a small moment, but it lit something inside me. For the first time since I arrived, I felt seen. I held onto his words as if they were a rope pulling me out of the darkness. Encouraged, I pushed myself harder. I picked up more shifts, I improved my English little by little, and I started applying for jobs again. Every rejection still hurt, but I didn't let it crush me the way it had before. I told myself that even failure was progress, that each no brought me closer to a yes. Then came the first real opportunity. A small trading company needed an assistant. The pay wasn't much, but compared to washing dishes, it felt like a step into another world. When I got the call, I remember sitting in silence for a long time, staring at my phone, afraid it was a mistake. But it wasn't. The next morning, I wore the cleanest shirt I owned and walked into an office where the air smelled of paper, coffee, and possibility. The office job wasn't glamorous. I answered phones, filed documents, and made endless cups of tea for the staff. Still, it felt like progress. Every morning when I looked at myself in the mirror, I whispered, "You're getting closer. Hold on." But progress came with new challenges. The office was filled with competition, envy, and whispered judgments. Some colleagues mocked my accent. Others treated me as if I were invisible. I forced myself to smile, to stay quiet, to swallow the sting of humiliation. I told myself it was temporary, that I just needed one chance to prove myself. Outside of work, the city kept pulling me in different directions. The malls, the lights, the wealth. It all seemed so close yet so far. I began to understand something important. Dubai wasn't just a city. It was a test. It tested patience, pride, and even one's sense of self. Every day felt like a battle. Not with others, but with the voice inside my head asking, "Are you strong enough to survive this?" And though I carried myself with determination, deep inside cracks were forming. I had made progress, yes, but I was also carrying secrets I couldn't share. The loneliness, the constant fear of failure, the nights where I wondered if I'd ever be more than just another nameless worker in a city that never noticed. It was only later that I realized the real story of my life in Dubai wasn't about finding success. It was about discovering the truth hiding beneath those glittering towers. A truth that would shake me, break me, and force me to make choices that would change everything. The months in Dubai stretched into a year, and slowly I began to understand the rhythm of the city. It wasn't the paradise people described in stories back home. It was a battlefield. Everyone was fighting for money, for survival, for recognition. Behind every smiling picture on social media was a struggle, a sacrifice, or a secret no one dared to admit. By then, I had adjusted to the office job. My days were predictable, sorting files, answering calls, and occasionally being scolded for mistakes I didn't even know I had made. But at least the pay came regularly, and with that I was able to send money home. Every time I heard my mother's voice filled with relief, I told myself, "This pain is worth it. You're giving them a better life." And yet, no matter how much I tried to hold myself together, the weight inside me grew heavier. Loneliness was one part of it, but there was also something darker, something I kept hidden from everyone. First, it was small. Nights when I couldn't sleep, I would walk through the streets, watching strangers live lives I couldn't touch. I would stand outside the glowing windows of restaurants, imagining what it would feel like to sit inside, order without counting coins, laugh without fear. Sometimes I lied to my family about how good things were, painting a perfect picture to hide the cracks. Those lies burned me from the inside, but I convinced myself they were necessary. Why worry them when I could carry the burden alone? Then came the moment that would change the tone of my life here. It started with a mistake. One afternoon, my manager asked me to handle a delivery form. I misfiled it, and the client grew angry. My manager's voice cut through me like a knife. "You're useless," he hissed in front of everyone. "If you can't handle this, maybe you don't belong here." The room went silent, my ears burned, and I wanted to disappear. That night, I sat on my thin mattress in the shared room, shaking with shame. The faces of my colleagues haunted me. I thought of my parents who believed I was succeeding, and I felt like a fraud. That was the first night I wrote in my notebook again. I filled page after page with words I couldn't say aloud. Words about fear, anger, loneliness, and the truth I couldn't share with anyone. My notebook became my only friend, the only place where my real story lived. But even as I tried to fight through the struggles, temptation began to whisper. One of my roommates, Samir, was different from the rest. He always had new clothes, extra money, and a phone that was newer than any of ours. One evening, when I asked how he managed it, he gave me a sly smile. "There are ways, brother. Dubai is full of shortcuts. Work hard if you want, but the smart ones, they know the back doors." I laughed it off, but his words stayed with me. I wanted to believe I was strong enough to resist, but every time I counted the few dirhams left in my pocket, every time I lied to my parents that I was doing fine, those back doors began to look tempting. Samir noticed my silence. "Don't act like you're not curious," he said one night. "Everyone here hides something. Why should you suffer when you could earn faster?" His voice was smooth, persuasive. He didn't tell me everything, but he told me just enough. That there were side hustles, gray areas, ways to make money that weren't exactly clean but weren't exactly crimes either. That was the second lesson Dubai taught me. Survival sometimes demands choices you swore you'd never make. I told myself I would never cross that line, that I would hold on to honesty no matter what. But deep inside, the line was already blurring. The truth was, I had already begun hiding pieces of myself from everyone. My struggles from my family, my shame from my colleagues, my hunger from my roommates. And in that silence, the secret inside me grew. It wasn't just about the lies I told. It was about who I was becoming. Some nights, when the city outside glittered like gold, I felt like I was fading into a shadow. I would look at myself in the mirror and wonder, who are you now? The boy who left home with dreams? Or the man who hides his failures behind a smile? And just when I thought things couldn't get heavier, life proved me wrong. One evening I got a call from home. My father's voice was weaker than usual. He told me my younger brother needed school fees, and there was no money left. His words cut through me. I couldn't let him down. I promised I would send the money within the week, even though my pockets were nearly empty. I ended the call with my heart pounding, my mind racing. That night, as I lay awake, Samir's words echoed louder than ever. Everyone here hides something. Why should you suffer when you could earn faster? It was in that moment that I realized my story in Dubai wasn't just about hard work and sacrifice. It was about choices. Dangerous, desperate choices that could either save me or destroy me. I didn't know it then, but I was standing on the edge of something much bigger. A secret that would tie me to people I barely trusted. A secret that, once taken, would change my life forever. And as I closed my notebook that night, one final thought lingered in my mind. Sometimes, survival doesn't make you stronger. Sometimes, it makes you someone you swore you'd never become. The day I crossed the line didn't feel dramatic at first. It was almost ordinary. Hot sun, endless traffic, and a long walk back from work with dust clinging to my shirt. But ordinary days are the ones that often hold the biggest turning points. And that evening, my path shifted in a way I couldn't undo. Samir was waiting for me in the shared room, leaning back on his mattress with his phone glowing in his hand. "Brother," he said with a smile that was more knowing than kind, "you've been thinking about what I told you, haven't you?" I wanted to deny it, but my silence betrayed me. My father's weak voice still echoed in my head. My brother's future depending on money I didn't have. My heart was heavy with guilt, but also desperate. "I need to send something home," I admitted quietly. "That's what I'm here for," Samir replied. He sat up and lowered his voice. "There's a man I know. He pays good money for small favors. Nothing dangerous, just helping him move things from one place to another. Simple." The way he said simple made it sound harmless, but inside a warning screamed. I had grown up believing that shortcuts came with hidden traps. But desperation is louder than warnings. That night, against everything I had promised myself, I agreed. The first favor was exactly as Samir described. I carried a sealed package across the city and handed it to a man I had never met before. He gave me an envelope with more money than I earned in 2 weeks. My hands shook as I counted it later, guilt fighting with relief. That money became my brother's school fee, my mother's peace of mind, my father's gratitude. Over the phone, their voices brightened with hope, and I told myself I had done the right thing. But deep inside, I knew I had taken the first step into shadows. Weeks turned into months, and the favors grew. Sometimes packages, sometimes documents, always quick, always paid. I never asked questions, and they never offered answers. Samir kept telling me, "Relax, it's just business. Everyone does it. Do you think anyone survives here just on their salary?" His laughter was sharp, almost mocking. On the surface, my life looked better. I had more money in my pocket, I could eat without counting coins, I even sent extra back home. My family praised me for being strong and successful. "We are so proud of you," my mother said one night, her voice glowing with joy. But her pride stabbed me like a knife because she didn't know the truth. She didn't know her son was living a lie. And the lie began to grow heavier. At work, I carried myself with a new confidence, but paranoia lived in my chest. I avoided eye contact, I jumped when the phone rang. I imagined my manager looking through me as if he knew. At night, I wrote in my notebook, my words turning darker. "If they ever find out, everything will fall apart." It wasn't just fear of the authorities. It was fear of myself. Who was I becoming? A son who lied to his parents. A worker hiding secrets in his pocket. A man who survived by bending the rules he once swore to respect. The first crack appeared when I noticed Kareem again, the kind man I had met months earlier at the cafeteria. He had become a customer at the office, and whenever we spoke, he asked about my life. Something about his eyes made me want to tell him everything, but I couldn't. I forced smiles, gave half-truths, and hid the storm inside me. Then came the betrayal. One night, after completing another delivery, I returned to the shared room to find Samir whispering on the phone. His voice was tense, urgent, and when he noticed me, he quickly ended the call. "Everything okay?" "Yes." He nodded too quickly. My stomach sank. Something was wrong. The next day, the man who usually paid me didn't show up. Instead, two strangers stood in his place. They looked at me with cold eyes, their voices sharp. "Samir told us you're reliable. Prove it." They handed me a package heavier than the others, their warning clear. "Don't open it. Don't be late." For the first time, fear gripped me fully. What if this wasn't just business? What if I was being pulled deeper into something I couldn't escape? I delivered the package, but the weight stayed on my shoulders long after it left my hands. That night, I confronted Samir. "What are you dragging me into?" I demanded. His smile was thin, almost cruel. "Relax, brother. You're making money. Isn't that what you wanted? Or do you want to go back to washing dishes?" His words cut deep because they were true. I had wanted the money, I had chosen this path, but now I felt trapped. From that day, our friendship shifted into something darker. Samir no longer felt like a guide. He felt like a chain around my neck. I began to see him not as a savior, but as someone who had pulled me into quicksand. Paranoia grew. Every police siren made my chest tighten. Every knock on the door sent my heart racing. I started sleeping with my clothes on, as if ready to run at any moment. My notebook filled with frantic words. "I can't stop now. If I leave, they'll know. If I stay, I'll lose myself." The breaking point came during a phone call with my father. His voice was weak again, and he spoke of needing medicine, of hospital bills that scared me. I promised him I would send money, my voice steady though my hands trembled. After I hung up, I realized something terrible. My family's survival now depended on the very secret that was destroying me. And in that moment, anger boiled inside me. Not at my family, not even at Dubai, but at myself. I had walked willingly into this cage, and now the door had slammed shut. But anger has a way of creating dangerous thoughts. For the first time, I began to wonder if I could turn the game around. If I could find a way to escape the trap Samir had set for me. And maybe, just maybe, take revenge on the man who had pulled me into this darkness. The days that followed felt like living in two different worlds. By day, I walked into the office, smiled at customers, and typed reports as if nothing was wrong. By night, I carried secrets in my pocket and guilt in my chest. The two lives clashed constantly, like waves hitting sharp rocks. Every time Kareem passed by my desk and asked, "How are you doing, my friend?" I forced a smile. I wanted to tell him everything, to confess, to unload the burden, but fear sealed my lips. What if he looked at me with disgust? What if he reported me? The notebook under my pillow grew heavier with each entry. I wrote about the shame of lying to my parents, the fear of being caught, the anger at Samir for trapping me, and the growing darkness inside my heart. My words looked like someone else's confession, not my own. Then the tension in our room thickened. Samir began to act differently. Colder, more commanding. He no longer asked if I wanted to help. He simply told me where to go, what to carry, and when to return. His tone made me feel like a servant, not a friend. One evening I tried to resist. "I can't keep doing this," I said firmly. His eyes narrowed. "You think you can walk away? After everything you've done, they already know your face, your name. You're in it as deep as I am." His words froze my blood. That was the trap. I wasn't just helping, I was marked. If I stopped, they wouldn't let me go. The next job came with a new level of fear. I was told to meet someone near the harbor late at night. The air smelled of salt and oil, and the sea was dark under the moonlight. A tall man with sharp eyes handed me a small black bag. His voice was low but firm. "Don't fail. Don't ask questions." As I walked back with the bag, my mind screamed with questions I wasn't allowed to ask. What was inside? Drugs? Money? Something worse? Each step felt heavier, like I was carrying not just the bag but also the weight of my ruined future. When I delivered it, I waited for relief to wash over me, but instead I felt hollow. The money in my hand no longer brought pride, it brought poison. At home, my family's happiness became painful to hear. My mother spoke about buying new clothes, my brother told me about school trips, and my father's voice carried hope again. They thought I was a hero. If they knew the truth, their love would turn to shame. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something terrifying. My fear was slowly turning into anger. Not just anger at Samir, but at myself for being weak, at Dubai for swallowing me whole, and at fate for pushing me into this corner. The anger pushed me toward thoughts I had never dared before. Maybe I didn't have to stay trapped. Maybe I could find a way out. But escaping meant outsmarting Samir, and the dangerous people behind him. The next day at work, I caught Samir whispering on his phone again. His back was to me, but his voice carried through the room. Yes, he'll do it. Don't worry. He's desperate. He has no choice. Chill ran through me. Was he talking about me? Was he selling me out to someone? When he turned and noticed me, his smile was too smooth, too rehearsed. Everything okay, brother? He asked. I nodded, but inside I burned with suspicion. From that moment, I began to watch him closely. I noticed how often he disappeared at night, how he avoided certain questions, how he counted money with a greed I hadn't seen before. He wasn't helping me, he was using me. The realization hit hard. Samir wasn't my friend. He was my enemy, the one who had lured me into this darkness and locked the door behind me. And slowly, a dangerous idea began to grow. What if I turned the tables? What if I found a way to trap him the way he had trapped me? The thought scared me, but it also gave me a strange sense of power. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a helpless victim. I felt like someone who could fight back. I began to plan quietly. Nothing big at first, just small steps. I wrote down his schedule, his contacts, his routines. I noticed who he met and when. I paid attention to details I had ignored before. Meanwhile, the jobs continued. Each one pulled me deeper into fear, but also gave me more reason to hate Samir. I told myself that if I could survive long enough, I would find the right moment to strike. But the pressure on my chest grew heavier each day. The authorities seemed closer. News headlines spoke of arrests in the city, of illegal networks being broken, of people disappearing into prison cells. Every time I read those stories, I saw my own face in the pictures. The breaking point came when I overheard Samir laughing with another man outside our building. His words sliced through me. He's too stupid to know he's being used. If anything goes wrong, he'll take the fall. That's what he's here for. The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I had felt before. I wasn't just angry, I was ready. Ready to fight, ready to risk everything, ready to make Samir pay for turning my life into a nightmare. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a silent promise to myself. I would no longer be his pawn. I would no longer carry his secrets without a voice. If I was going down, I would drag him with me. The plan wasn't clear yet, but the fire was lit. And in the silence of the room, as Samir snored peacefully on the mattress across from mine, I whispered the words that would shape everything that followed. This ends with me. The night I decided to act, the city felt colder than usual. It wasn't the weather. Dubai's nights were always warm, but the way the lights looked too bright and empty made me feel exposed. I sat on the edge of my mattress with my notebook open, a list of observations trembling under my fingers. Samir's routines, the men he met, the vague addresses he slipped out to. Small things, but enough to build a net. I hadn't told anyone. Not Kareem, not my family, not a single soul. Secrecy had been my shield for months. Now it had to be my weapon. I knew I was taking a risk. An enormous one. If they suspected, if Samir noticed, I could lose everything. And yet the alternative, doing nothing, felt worse. I had a face now in my head, the one of my mother when she asked about money. The hollow in my brother's voice when he described the school trip he couldn't afford. I wanted to fix those things, even if the price was my safety. My first move was small and stupidly brave. I started recording. Not with a fancy device. Just the old phone tucked in my sock during conversations, the tiny recorder app one pretended never to use. I followed Samir when I could, always keeping my distance, watching who he hugged and who he whispered to. He met a man with a gold chain by the harbor 3 nights in a row. He took envelopes from one pocket and slid them into another. He laughed with people I'd never want to meet in daylight. Piece by piece, the image formed. One afternoon, I bumped into Kareem in the office corridor. He asked about my family, and for reasons I couldn't explain, I found myself telling him a fraction of the truth. I left out details about packages or threats, but I didn't lie about my fear. He listened and his face changed. There was no surprise, Only a slow, steady concern that made me feel less alone. He didn't lecture me. He didn't ask me to stop. Instead, he said something that shifted everything. Be careful. But if you have proof, show it to someone who can help. His words were tempting, but I didn't trust the authorities. Not here, not with what I had done. I needed leverage, not arrests. I needed to break Samir's control so he couldn't blackmail me, so the people who thought they owned me would think twice. Kareem's eyes, though, gave me an idea. He knew people, vendors, managers, businessmen, who disliked the dangerous men who prowled the harbor. Maybe he could help me expose Samir in a way that didn't end with me behind bars. We planned carefully. Kareem pretended to be a client needing urgent document transfers. He arranged a meet by a quiet warehouse, one of the places Samir liked. I volunteered to deliver. Samir trusted me. He was careless around me because he believed he controlled me. That arrogance would be his undoing. The night of the plan, my heart hammered so loud it felt like footsteps. I tucked the phone into my sock, its red recording small but steady. Samir glanced at me with a grin that hid contempt and triumph. Easy money, brother, he said. After this, we rest. I forced a smile, the worst kind of theater. The streetlights painted us in harsh yellow. The harbor water smelled of oil and old fish. When the buyer arrived, a tall man with a hood, Samir stepped forward to make the handoff. I stayed near the van, pretending to check a manifest. Through the sliver of a gap, I saw the exchange. An envelope, a hand, a nod. My recording caught every second. I felt a surge of relief. Proof. Real dangerous proof. But luck has a habit of turning when you feel safest. As Samir straightened, he caught my eye. That single glance carried 1,000 meanings. Suspicion, recognition, threat. He smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. You've been busy, he said. You look different. My breath hitched. For a second I froze. Then I lied. Work is good. My voice sounded small and thin. He laughed, but the laugh was a blade. The buyer nodded, put the envelope in Samir's hand, and left. We breathed for a moment, though the moment felt brittle. I thought we were safe. I thought I had what I needed. But later that night, the room exploded. Samir's hands shook as he counted money on the table, but his eyes held fire. You think you can play me, he spat. You think you can watch me and not tell. His voice was low and dangerous. The men he had dealings with were unpredictable. If they suspected betrayal, there would be consequences. I had only one move left. The next morning I stayed home sick from work. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I listened to the recording again and again. The voices jagged, the transactions obvious. But I knew from tales I'd heard in whispers that recordings alone could be dismissed. I needed more: names, faces, traces that linked Samir to the larger network. That meant another meeting, another risk. It meant deliberately walking into the lion's den. I made a call I promised myself I would never make. I dialed a number I had noted from Samir's contacts during an argument, one I'd scribbled in my notebook like a prayer. A woman answered. Her voice was cool and professional. I told her I could help with evidence. I didn't tell her everything. I offered what I had, and she agreed to meet in public, 2 blocks from the harbor, at midday. She said she was interested in cleaning up this area. The words gave me hope and filled me with dread at the same time. The meeting was the most dangerous thing I'd done. I walked into a cafe with knees like jelly and handed over my phone under the table. The woman slipped it into a pocket and said, "This is good. We have people who can verify this. But you must be careful. They will know." As I walked back to the van, the old fear returned, but now it walked beside a new thing: resolve. I had stepped into a web, but I had also found threads that could pull me out. I was no longer just playing a part in someone else's life. I had a plan, shaky and dangerous, but mine. That night I couldn't sleep. I imagined Samir discovering the handoff, imagined the men cornering me, imagined my family's faces forever stained by shame. I also imagined my brother's school bag, new and whole, my mother's surprised smile. The two visions battled until dawn. By morning I had decided. If they came for me, I would fight. If they blackmailed me, I would speak. If I had to risk everything to free myself, I would. I had become a man who could no longer accept being owned by fear. The plan was set. The first stones had been thrown into the water. Now I had to wait and watch the ripples. The morning after handing over the recording, I woke with a kind of heaviness that makes every breath feel borrowed. The city outside looked ordinary. Buses humming, vendors calling, sun flashing off glass towers, but inside me everything had shifted. The line had been crossed. There was no turning back. Samir moved around the room with unusual silence. He wasn't his usual cocky self. No humming, no lazy jokes, no arrogant instructions. Just silence. His eyes darted to me once, then away. It was enough to tell me he suspected something. I kept my head down, pretending to tie my shoelaces longer than necessary. My pulse hammered, but I forced my face to remain calm. I couldn't show fear. Fear was blood in the water, and Samir was the kind of man who could smell it from a mile away. At the office, the weight of his suspicion followed me. Every time he leaned in close, whispering instructions, I felt the heat of his breath and the hidden knives in his tone. Careful, brother. People talk too much. Sometimes their tongues cut deeper than steel. I nodded, as if his warning meant nothing. But inside my stomach turned. Was he threatening me? Did he already know? By lunchtime, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I left the office early and sat by the creek, watching boats drift lazily by. Families laughed nearby, children tugged at balloons, tourists snapped pictures of glittering skyscrapers. To them, Dubai was paradise. To me, it had become a battlefield where every step was a trap. That night, Kareem called me. His voice was low, urgent. "The woman you met," she passed the recording forward. "There are people listening now. They want more. They say this is enough to start a case, but not enough to end it." My chest tightened. What do they want from me? Names, faces, proof that Samir isn't just a middleman, but connected to the larger chain. They need something bigger. Bigger. The word rattled in my skull like a curse. I had risked everything already, but now they wanted more. I closed my eyes, picturing Samir's sly grin, the way he called me brother while sharpening the knife for my back. For once, the fear didn't win. The anger did. "I'll get it," I whispered. My voice trembled, but it carried resolve. The chance came sooner than expected. 2 nights later, Samir said we had to meet someone important. "Not the usual," he muttered, buttoning his shirt with unusual care. "This one matters." His words confirmed it. This was the bigger link. The kind of meeting the authorities needed proof of. My blood surged with adrenaline. We drove in silence to the edge of the city, where bright towers gave way to warehouses and empty streets. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of dust and oil. Samir's phone buzzed, and he barked into it before tossing it on the dashboard. I memorized the number flashing on the screen before it disappeared. Another thread for my growing net. The man we met was different. Not like the others with sloppy manners and rushed handoffs. He was tall, dressed sharply in a suit that didn't belong in a warehouse. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and when he looked at me, I felt as though he had peeled away my skin and seen the truth underneath. "This is him?" the man asked, his accent crisp. Samir nodded. "He's good. Loyal." Loyal. The word cut into me like a blade. Loyal to what? To crime. To betrayal. To the chains Samir had locked me in. I forced myself to lower my gaze, pretending humility. The man handed Samir a file. Thick, sealed, important. "This goes up north," he said. "No delays. No mistakes." I didn't need to open it to know it was the kind of evidence that could ruin lives. My pulse quickened. If I could capture this, photographs, recordings, it would be more than enough. But danger circled closer than I imagined. As Samir tucked the file under his arm, the man's eyes flicked back to me. "And him? Can you vouch for him?" The silence stretched. Samir's smirk returned, slow and deliberate. He looked at me like a cat deciding whether to keep playing with a mouse. Finally, he said, "He's mine. If he betrays me, he dies before the sun rises." The words weren't said to me. They were said about me. But they landed in my chest like stones. I had been exposed. The meeting ended quickly. Samir shoved me toward the van, his grip tight on my shoulder. We drove in silence. The city lights blurred past, but I barely saw them. My mind replayed his words again and again. If he betrays me, he dies before the sun rises. That night in our shared room, I lay still as Samir moved about. He didn't sleep. He paced, checked his phone, counted money, glanced at me with eyes that pierced the dark. My breaths came slow, controlled, pretending sleep. Inside my thoughts screamed. He knew. Or at least, He suspected enough to watch me like a hawk. The walls were closing in. The plan that had seemed bold now felt suicidal. But then I remembered the file, the sealed package, the man in the suit, proof still within reach. If I could capture it, if I could deliver it to the woman or her people, the entire network could be exposed. Samir's threats wouldn't matter if he was behind bars. My own survival depended on it. So I waited, I watched, and as dawn crept into the room, turning the walls from gray to pale gold, I made my choice. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about revenge. Samir had dragged me into this life, forced me to lie to my family, and mocked my desperation. He thought I was weak. He thought I was his pawn. But pawns can reach the other side of the board. I whispered to myself, barely audible even to me. Tonight it ends. The day passed in unbearable slowness, every tick of the clock like a hammer inside my skull. Samir never left my side, as if he could smell the thoughts swirling in my head. He hovered in the office, followed me to the canteen, even stood near when I spoke briefly with Kareem. His suspicion was no longer hidden. It was alive, breathing down my neck. But suspicion alone wasn't enough to destroy me. The file was. That thick, sealed folder we'd carried back from the meeting sat locked in his duffel bag. I knew because he checked it every few hours, unzipping the bag just enough to touch it like it was treasure. If I wanted to end this, if I wanted to break his power, I needed that folder. That night, fate gave me an opening. Samir's phone buzzed just after midnight. He glanced at me, then stepped outside to take the call. His voice rose and fell sharply in the hallway, words clipped with irritation. I didn't hesitate. My heart pounded as I slipped across the room and knelt by the duffel bag. The zipper groaned too loudly, like a scream in the silence. My hands trembled as I pulled it open just enough to slide the file free. The weight of it was shocking. Dozens of pages, thick with secrets. I didn't dare open it fully. I snapped quick photos instead, each page catching the harsh light from the bulb overhead. Nap, nap, nap. My breath caught with every shot. When I heard footsteps returning, I shoved the file back into the bag, zipped it closed, and scrambled into bed. Samir walked in seconds later, eyes sharp, phone still in his hand. His gaze swept the room, then landed on me. I forced a slow, sleepy breath. He watched for a long moment, then muttered something under his breath and collapsed onto his mattress. But I couldn't sleep. My phone under the pillow now held proof that could destroy him. The next morning, I left early under the excuse of buying breakfast. In reality, I went straight to the cafe where I'd met the woman before. She was waiting, as if she had known I'd come. I slid my phone across the table, my hands clammy. "It's all there," I whispered. She scrolled through the photos quickly, her eyes widening slightly. "This is enough," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was a weight behind it. "But you must understand, if he finds out you gave this to us, he will not forgive you." I swallowed hard. "I know." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Stay close to him. We need him to trust you until the final move. When the time comes, we'll act. Stay close." The words were poison, but I nodded. That evening, when I returned to the room, Samir was waiting. He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He simply stared, his eyes burning holes into me. "Where were you?" he asked. I forced my voice steady. "Breakfast. Then work." He leaned back, watching me with a predator's patience. "Strange. People say they saw you elsewhere." My blood turned to ice. "Who?" I asked too quickly. He smirked. "Does it matter? Just remember, brother, I always know more than you think." The way he said it, the way his eyes glittered, it felt like a test. And I had no choice but to play along. Days stretched into weeks, the tension unbearable. Every step I took felt watched, every word I spoke weighed. Samir's suspicion never fully faded. He asked questions in roundabout ways, circled me like a hawk. But he didn't strike. Not yet. And then came the night everything unraveled. We were sent to deliver another package, this one heavier, more guarded. Samir insisted I come with him, his tone brooking no refusal. We drove in silence, the city lights blurring into neon streaks. My chest ached with dread. At the warehouse, the suited man returned. His presence sucked the air out of the room. He took the package from Samir, flipped through the contents, and then looked directly at me. His eyes narrowed. "This one," he said coldly. I don't trust him. Samir's smirk faltered. For the first time I saw fear in his eyes. He's loyal, he said quickly. The man's gaze didn't shift. Prove it. Make him carry out the next delivery. Alone. My blood froze. Alone. With no cover, no excuse, no escape. Samir hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he turned to me, his smile sharp as glass. You heard him. Tonight you prove your loyalty. I wanted to scream, to run, to confess everything, but I couldn't. The suited man's stare pinned me in place. If I refused, I was finished. If I agreed, I was stepping deeper into the abyss. He nodded. My throat was dry. I'll do it. The man handed me a slim case, sealed and cold to the touch. Deliver this, he ordered. If you fail, you don't return. We drove back in silence. Samir's fingers tapped the steering wheel, his smirk returning inch by inch. See, brother. They test us because they know we're strong. He chuckled. Or maybe they just want to see if you break. That night, when I sat in the room with the case on the table, I realized the truth. This was the moment. The authorities had enough. I had enough. This was my chance to end it, one way or another. The case was supposed to be delivered at dawn. But I didn't wait. Instead, I took it straight to the cafe, to the woman, to the faceless network of people who had promised to act. She opened it with careful hands, her eyes widening again. This is it, she whispered. This ties him directly to the chain. When he delivers nothing, they'll turn on him. My chest heaved. And me. She closed the case. You've done enough. Now let us do the rest. I stumbled back into the night, my heart pounding with both fear and triumph. I had done it. For the first time, I wasn't the pawn, I had made the move. But as I walked into our room just before sunrise, Samir was waiting, wide awake, his eyes burning. The smirk was gone. His voice was a whisper of steel. Where did you go? Froze. And in that moment I knew. The final game had begun. The silence between us was unbearable. Samir sat upright on his mattress. His eyes locked on me like a predator about to strike. The faint light of dawn crept through the curtains, painting his face in shadows. Where did you go? He asked again, his voice low, controlled, too calm. My mouth went dry. Nowhere. I just needed fresh air. He tilted his head slightly, studying me. Fresh air. At 4 a.m, with the case still sitting here. My heart stopped. Case. He had checked. He knew it was gone. I tried to breathe evenly, but it felt like inhaling broken glass. I left it safe, I stammered. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. Safe. You think I'm a fool? His voice cracked with rage, the calm facade breaking. You touched what wasn't yours. You betrayed me. His words pierced deeper than I expected. Because in some twisted way, part of me had wanted to be loyal to him. Part of me had believed his promises of survival, brotherhood, power. But now the mask was off. Samir stood, slow and deliberate. I gave you a place here. I made you part of something bigger. And you repay me with this. His fists clenched, veins bulging on his arms. I backed away until the wall pressed cold against my spine. Samir, listen. No, he roared, slamming his hand against the wall beside my head. The plaster cracked under the force. His breath was hot on my face, his eyes burning with fury. Tell me who you gave it to. Tell me, or I swear. He didn't finish. The sudden pounding at the door froze us both. Heavy, authoritative knocks that rattled the frame. Police. Open the door. Samir's eyes widened, and for the first time, fear flickered across his face. He turned sharply to me, realization dawning. You. His voice was a whisper of betrayal. You called them. Before I could speak, he lunged at the duffel bag, snatching out a pistol I hadn't even known he had. My stomach dropped as cold metal glinted in his shaking hands. They won't take me alive, he snarled. The door splintered as boots crashed against it. Shouts filled the air. Samir grabbed my arm, yanking me in front of him like a shield. The gun pressed into my ribs. Move, he barked. The police burst in, weapons raised, their voices thunderous. Drop it. Drop the gun. Samir laughed, a broken manic sound. You think I'll drop it? He's mine. He betrayed me. His grip tightened, his nails digging into my skin. My pulse raced so fast I thought I would faint. In that split second, I saw everything. My parents' disappointed faces, the endless nights of hunger, the lies, the manipulation, the chains Samir had wrapped around me. And I saw the chance to finally be free. With all the strength left in me, I twisted hard, slamming my elbow into his ribs. He gasped, loosening his grip. I dropped low, tearing free just as the gun discharged. The deafening crack split the air, plaster exploding from the wall inches above me. The police fired back. Samir staggered, his body jerking as bullets struck. The smirk that had haunted me for months vanished, replaced by a look of pure shock. His pistol slipped from his hand as he crumpled to the floor, blood pooling beneath him. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the ragged sound of my own breathing. Then the officers surged forward, pulling me aside, shouting commands I barely heard. My vision blurred, the world spinning. Samir lay still, his eyes open, staring at nothing. And just like that, it was over. The days that followed were a haze of questioning, reports, and endless paperwork. The police confirmed what I had suspected all along. Samir had been part of a sprawling network that trafficked not only illegal goods but also vulnerable workers like us, using them as pawns. My photos, the case, and my testimony had been the final pieces they needed to bring it down. But victory didn't feel like triumph. Felt heavy, hollow. When I stood alone in the interrogation room, staring at my reflection in the glass, I realized the truth. Dubai hadn't changed me because of wealth or opportunity. It had changed me because I had walked through fire. I had seen how darkness could consume a man, and how hard it was to keep from being swallowed whole. And yet, I had survived. One afternoon, the woman from the cafe came to see me. She wasn't just some mysterious contact. She was part of an international task force watching Samir's network for months. She smiled faintly, sliding a cup of tea across the table. "You were brave," she said. I shook my head. "I was terrified." "Bravery isn't the absence of fear," she replied softly. "It's acting in spite of it." Her words stayed with me. In the weeks after Samir's death, I was given the chance to stay in Dubai legally, to rebuild my life without shadows chasing me. It wasn't easy. Every street reminded me of him, of the choices I'd made, of the boy I had been when I first stepped off that plane. Naive, desperate, blind. But slowly I began to heal. I found work at a construction site, the pay small but honest. The men there were like me, struggling, sweating, dreaming of something better. At night, when I lay in my bed, I no longer felt the weight of chains around my chest. Felt tired, yes, but free. And sometimes when I closed my eyes, I saw Samir's face. Not the smirk, not the rage, but the flicker of fear in his eyes that last morning. It reminded me of a truth I'd never forget. Power built on lies will always collapse. My life in Dubai had been carved from pain, betrayal, and survival. But it was also where I had found strength I never knew I had. For the first time in years, I believed in tomorrow. When the dust finally settled, I found myself standing in a city that looked the same but felt entirely different. The tall glass towers still sparkled under the desert sun. The busy streets still roared with ambition. But inside me, something fundamental had shifted. For months, Dubai had been a place of chains, of hunger, of manipulation, of being trapped under someone else's will. But now, as I looked out across its skyline, I realized it could also be a place of rebirth. Samir was gone. His shadow no longer stretched across my every step. And yet, freedom did not come wrapped in joy. Came in silence. The first night after his death, I lay awake in my small bed at the police safe house, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. I should have felt relief. I should have felt victory. Instead, I felt empty. The image of Samir collapsing under gunfire replayed endlessly in my mind. His final look of shock haunted me. I hated him for everything he had done, but I also mourned the wasted life he had chosen, the darkness that swallowed him whole. That was my first lesson. Revenge, no matter how justified, always leaves scars. In the days that followed, I met with officials who explained what had happened. Samir had been part of a larger web, a network that stretched far beyond Dubai. My courage, though I still questioned whether it was courage or just desperation, had been the crack that broke it open. People I would never meet were freed because of it. Lives I would never see were saved. But I was still just a student, still just a boy who had left home chasing dreams. Now, I was a survivor carrying memories that would never fade. One morning I stood by the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. The air smelled of salt and possibility. I remembered the night I had walked alone with the duffel bag, terrified, my legs shaking. I remembered the boy who had stepped off the plane with wide eyes, thinking Dubai was a golden city where success was waiting on every corner. That boy was gone. In his place stood someone harder, wiser, more cautious. Slowly, I began to rebuild. The cafe woman, the one who had first slipped me her number, introduced me to people who could help me find honest work. I started at the bottom, carrying bricks at a construction site under the scorching sun. It wasn't glamorous, and the pay was barely enough, but every dirham I earned felt clean, free of poison. My hands blistered, my back ached, but my soul felt lighter. The men I worked with came from everywhere: India, Pakistan, Nepal, Africa. Each of them carried stories of sacrifice, of leaving families behind to chase a better life. At night, when we sat together eating simple meals of rice and lentils, I realized I was not alone in my struggles. We were all dreamers, fighters, survivors. For the first time since leaving home, I began to feel a sense of belonging. But healing was not just about work. It was about facing myself. One evening after my shift, I visited a small library tucked away in an old part of the city. The air smelled of paper and dust, and the quiet felt sacred. I picked up a notebook and began to write. Every memory, every wound, every fear. Words spilled out of me like water breaking through a dam. Writing became my therapy, my way of taking back control of my story. Sometimes tears stained the pages. Sometimes I wrote so furiously my hand cramped. But slowly, I began to see patterns, to understand how I had been lured, how I had ignored the red flags, how desperation had blinded me. Instead of hating myself for it, I started forgiving myself. I was young. I was desperate. And yet, I had found the courage to break free. That was my second lesson. Survival is not weakness. Survival is strength. Months passed. My body grew stronger from the work, my mind clearer from the writing. The city that had once crushed me now became my teacher. I learned discipline, resilience, humility. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. I was at the construction site when the manager called me over. "You speak English well," he said, handing me a set of papers. "Help me translate for the new workers." It was a small task, but it lit something inside me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was contributing. I was becoming useful, building trust. Over time, I earned more responsibility. Eventually, I was asked to oversee small groups, to guide new arrivals, to help them avoid the mistakes I once made. And in guiding them, I found my purpose. Each time I warned a newcomer not to trust shady offers, each time I explained the dangers of shortcuts, I felt like I was rewriting my own past. Maybe I couldn't erase what happened with Samir. Maybe I couldn't go back to being that innocent boy with wide eyes. But I could make sure others didn't fall into the same trap. That was my third lesson. Pain can become purpose if you choose to use it. Looking back now, I see how deeply Dubai changed me. Not in the way I expected. Not with riches or luxury. But with scars that taught me resilience, with struggles that carved out strength I didn't know I had. I still think of Samir sometimes. His laughter, his manipulation, his rage. I wonder what he might have become if he had chosen differently. But then I remind myself. His choices were his, and mine are mine. And my choice is to live, to move forward, to carry his memory not as a chain but as a warning. Dubai broke me, yes, but it also rebuilt me into someone unshakable. And that is the story of how my life changed in Dubai. Not because of money, not because of dreams fulfilled, but because the city forced me to face the darkest parts of myself and come out stronger on the other side. If this story touched you, remember, every struggle has a lesson, and every scar carries strength. Have you ever faced a moment that changed your life forever, just like my time in Dubai? Share your own experience in the comments, because your story might inspire someone else. If you want more emotional English stories about survival, struggle, and hope, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us. Every week, we share a new journey that could speak to your heart.